did you actually know about the Tuskegee Airmen before you started filming this project?
I knew a lot. I'm from a very small town called LaGrange, Georgia, about 45 minutes southeast of Tuskegee. And we had a very, very rich heritage and understanding of who they were because so many of the relatives and descendants of these guys were, in and around those parts. So I grew up knowing how incredible these guys were. And it was just such an honor when I found out that they were doing it. I felt it my duty to push my way through and pay tribute in any way I could.
Yeah. What about you?
I had a general knowledge. I have a lot of family members who are actually in the military, who have gone overseas. My grandfather was in Vietnam. My great grandfather was actually in World War II, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to have that, and then just to hear faintly about the Tuskegee Airmen and how great they were, to do this movie and learn so much more, it was amazing.
And you?
All I knew was they were the first African American fighter pilots in the U.S. Air Force. I didn't know I didn't know the depth of the struggle. I didn't know the amazing things that they accomplished. These are all things that I learned on set, and it made for just a much more personally gratifying experience.
Well, for me, it was one of those things where I'm from Norfolk, Virginia, and I have a lot of family that's in the military. So I'd hear the name, but it didn't have. We don't put the importance on things that aren't in our history books. We just think that they existed. If they were important, they'd be in our history books, and we'd be tested on them. So then when Cuba was in the first Tuskegee Airmen, I was like, well, this is interesting. I watched it, and it became a classic. Like most of the films that when they finally get done, they become classics. But then when I had to dive into this as a character, it was a whole nother level of research. So it's the kind of thing now where I feel like I'm going to make sure my kids know, and as many people as I can talk to about it. So yeah, I know a lot more now. It's been progressive.
Yeah.
I just remember being frustrated and embarrassed. I was his age, 21, 22, didn't know who they were. I was like, I just finished school, and I still don't know who they were. There wasn't a curriculum that studied the Tuskegee Airmen. It was, and now here we are, 2012, and finally celebrating them on a global scale.
To my shame, I knew very little about the Tuskegee Airmen before I actually read the script. But as soon as I did, it became an obsession of mine to know more about them. And then having been afforded the role to absolutely do them justice as an actor, telling the story, but also as a black man in the 21st century, wanting that story to be told. The shocking thing for me was at least I had the excuse of being British. A lot of Americans, both white and black, didn't know about them as well, which is also why this film is very important.
And to my shame, I knew a great deal about their exploits, but I had forgotten to exemplify their attitudes and actions in my own life and their courageousness.
How so?
Well, they were disciplined. They stood for a purpose, and they fought when the fight needed to happen.
Is it about time, due time for this story to be told? Because when you look back in history in the textbooks, it doesn't really give you much of a detail of what really went on.
Yeah, the story should have been told 50 years ago.
Right.
But this country should have been equal 50 years ago. It's still not equal, but as a result of our efforts, the military has been desegregated, and people now have opportunity to move ahead without legal barriers. We still have those intrinsic subjective barriers where people stereotype folks by race, where people accept the stereotype. And one of the things we hope that young people will do, that they will understand that don't accept the stereotype, that excellence is an antidote to prejudice, that excellence overcomes obstacles, and you got to work for it. It just doesn't drop out of the sky.